there will never be a good time. Maybe I'll always be a work in progress. But maybe, you'll give me another push or something that I'll come back 2 years later to you and I'm like, see what you did.
I think we're all works in progress all the time, right? It's kind of the exciting thing, to always be pushing and always be discovering new stuff and meeting new people and waiting for those aha moments. Like I find that's what I find is so exciting. I think we live in such a time where everything feels like you have to do it now, and the thing is there's time. I was so mortified by the thought of anyone seeing my work that I didn't want people to see it. We just passed the 4-year anniversary of my dad, and I still like that. My table will never be even again, and I love my mom so much, but they're just different. They were just different energies, and just they provided different things to me and my siblings, and I'll never have that side of my table back, and I just have to learn how to live differently.
So happy to see you because I remember when I first actually spoke to you, that was via the Art Queen's call. I was having a really hard time. And I remember I asked you a question and you gave me an answer where I was having a very hard time. And you were like, you know what? Don't care for what people think. Just go with the flow and weed out anything and everything that's stopping you. It's been 2 years since that call, since you spoke that, and we've been in touch.
Really?
Yes, 2 years. I'll tell you where I was at that point. I was living, I just, the COVID had just started, things were falling short. I was very confused, very lonely, didn't know what to do, had nothing in place. 2 years later, I have a full-time practice. I have my podcast, Arts to Arts Project, our magazine, the editorials, the course, so much that I have been saying that to you for so long. I have kept on like I keep messaging you, I keep telling you, you know what? I have so much to credit you for this. So much.
I think it's all you.
But I do agree, of course, there's a lot of work that I made sure I did, but sometimes you just need that one person, one push, and something happened in that moment for me. As
Oh,
it
I'm
it
I'm
was
so
just
happy. Yeah.
thank you. So I want to start by saying a big thank you because after 2 years, I have been thinking of calling you for so long, and I was like, I just don't know what is that right moment for me because it really meant a lot for me to come here and to have this conversation. I felt like you know there will never be a good time. Maybe I'll always be a work in progress, but maybe you'll give me another push or something that I'll come back 2 years later to you, and I'm like, see what you did.
Yep, that's the thing. I think we're all works in progress all the time, right? It's kind of the exciting thing, to always be pushing and always be discovering new stuff and meeting new people and waiting for those aha moments. Like I find that's what I find is so exciting.
Scary as well. To be honest,
Yes.
I love that excitement of I'm 100% in progress person. But my goodness, the past 2 years, I'm so scared of the coming day because it's been terribly, terribly hard. And I think when you push those days, and it's like, I love the journey, but I'm getting more and more scared of what life can throw. But even then, it's like, it also shows you the courage and the strength that you can have.
Wow.
But yeah, I am so excited to speak to you. Okay, tell me something. How are you doing today?
Uh, really good, actually. It's very cold in Canada, but I'm very tucked away. I've been working in my studio. I've got paint all over my hands, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was a good day.
Amazing. Yes, and you've had a lot too in the past 2 years since we spoke. There's so much that has happened for you. I loved your shows. I think out of everything that you've done and I've seen so far, your collaboration with the jewelry project, like, oh my goodness. I was like,
Oh
this
yeah,
is
that's
my
right up
dream
your
come true.
alley. Yeah, that's right up
Yes,
your alley. Yeah,
yes.
that was amazing and just kind of happened really strangely and at a perfect moment. And they reached out and asked they wanted to start this project where they would recycle all of their jewelry that they were going to toss out because they didn't want to put it into the landfill. And so they worked with Penny Lane. You know Penny
Yes,
Lane,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
they worked
yes.
with Penny Lane to choose an artist who would start this program, this first full circle artist program. And I was the first artist because Penny said,
Wow.
Danielle loves old broken jewelry, send it to her. So they showed up. One of the women that works for Lovers Tempo has family near me. So she came in a car with a huge tub and two giant bags. They were so heavy, we could barely lift them from her car to my
Oh,
car,
wow.
filled with broken
With two.
jewelry.
Oh my. And it feel like a treasure to you?
Oh, it was like I went down to my studio for, I think I was probably down there for about 8 hours, and they had organized it like how a jeweler would organize it. I didn't know what any of the stuff was though. Like to me, it was
Yeah.
like, what are these weird little sticks? Apparently that's why you make jewelry. But anyway, so I was like, I'm going to put those in the nest pile. So I had that, and I had a flower pile, and I had, circles and triangles, and I separated everything out by shape and color and everything, and then just started playing. And I was supposed to make one piece for this auction, and all the money would go to an organization that would then plant trees. And so I was supposed to make one piece. I made five. And then they let me even keep some, like they're going to pick a new artist this year, but they let me keep a bunch of the jewelry to incorporate it into my work because now I'm addicted. I'm like, I can't give
Yes,
you
yes.
back all
How
this
can,
stuff.
yes, yes. I get you 100%. It's
Yeah.
like I think people like us are such hoarders, and I'm like, I can't let go of trash or things that I find people find trash, but I find them beautiful. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do this with like right now,
Yeah.
but I know one day I will
Yes.
make something out of this.
Yeah, my studio looks like an antique shop or a thrift shop or something. It is just like junk
Oh
everywhere, and
my,
I could not be happier. Like it just,
oh my
I love it down
God.
there. And yeah, but that was such a fun project, and I just gave all the stuff back because they're picking a new artist in the next month or two. And I was like, if you want to pick me again, like that would be.
That would
So
be
anyway,
still, oh my God.
yeah, I mean, they're
I loved
amazing,
that
and
work.
yeah,
This
it
was
was a
like,
really beautiful project.
I think it was such a, like your work, it felt so much you, but yet it was so different. And it really felt also it felt like the finds that you actually share on Jealous Curator, that
Oh, thank
blows your
you.
mind. And like, I was like, oh my God, this is like, this is a Jealous Curator pick. This is definitely a Jealous Curator pick.
That's so funny because when I make my work, I keep that in the back of my head. Like I think, would the jealous curator write about this? And if she
Oh
wouldn't
my
write about
goodness.
it, I know that the work's not there yet, so I keep pushing. So until I feel like it's a very like out of body experience, but
Yes.
until I think, would she write about this? Yes or no, then I know that I've got to push or I'm there. So that's a very big compliment to say that that's what you thought about
Uh,
that work. And
oh, it was,
I mean,
I
it
was
was
blown.
they said to do whatever I wanted, and so
And
I
you
was
did.
kind of, yeah, I wanted to, but I didn't incorporate any like found imagery, like
Yeah.
paper pieces, because I really wanted to honor the jewelry. Like I really wanted it just to be about the jewelry. Um, so there was no little people in there or anything, or cigarette butts or anything, which I think maybe they were expecting, but I just felt like it took away from the jewelry too much. And I just really wanted to focus on the chains and all the bits and pieces and the sparkly stuff. Cause it was just, yeah, like you said, it was like a treasure. Opening that bucket, I just was
Yes.
like, nobody bother me. I'm going to be down here for hours just sifting through stuff. It was so much fun.
It was so it this is what so if in India if you go to thrift markets and local market, this is what it feels like, so when we go to like jewelry markets, and even if it's just not like um raw pieces like pieces, but also ready jewelry, so you'll find these
Yeah.
alleys and there'll be like tons of jewelries like hung up on strings, and it feels like it's like a treasure hunt. And when I saw that series, and I was like, it felt a lot of home to me, because I think that's also where I
Mm.
come from, and I could feel that the sense of a jewelry, like it also felt like it shape shifting, because even though it had that feeling, it was still something else. It
Yeah,
didn't,
it
you know,
was.
it was very.
Yep.
I totally love that. It's still always like some work that you see is always parked in like back of your head. I think
Mm.
that one is for me.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice. I should come on here more often. You can tell me how great I
Oh, I have a long list.
am.
Okay, I am so happy and I'm very, very excited to, speak to you. And before we just go in, I wanted to let you know that, Arts to Hearts podcast is all about the idea is always to have an organic conversation. I don't come prepared with questions. I love to call people that I truly, truly admire and love, or I want to speak to, learn. You definitely are on top of the list. So I'm very happy. I just wanted to know if you're comfortable with speaking about your journey so far. I wouldn't do regular questions. There's a lot of information about you, your journey. I have a lot of questions about um, I want to ask you about, I know you've been taking a break from the podcast, your journey with being a jealous curator and being your artist yourself. And
Yeah.
I think I truly feel the flip side and, the overlap, yet the juxtaposition of both the things. And I've heard the recent conversations with Andy. So I really want to touch
Mm.
upon that and see what you feel about it. If you're okay talking about
Yeah,
grief,
totally.
if you're okay talking
Mm.
about grief and how that impacted you, because
Yeah.
I'd really love to speak to you about that and anything else that feels, but these two things about your journey, if that's okay with
Yes, absolutely. I'm an
you.
open
Perfect.
book.
I love that. Okay. Something that's been on top of my mind. We've been missing art for a year. I know you're coming back. I recently, for the first time, so I did my podcast for 1 year straight, 100 plus episodes, no break at all, never missed a week. And
Wow.
and then 2 months ago, and all of this while I lost my mom, there was a whirlwind at my home in my personal life. But it was one thing that I think it really helped me push myself. But I realized at one point I pushed myself too far,
Mm.
and I was like, I was too afraid to take a break because I think maybe the fear of losing out, the fear of letting something go, something that I've built very with a lot of love. But I did. I know you've also recently taken a good break, and a lot of us have been messaging you, missing you out, and always I remember pushing you like, when are you coming back? And you were like, I will. So I just want to ask you, and you've also spoken about this on Andy J Pizza. Can you talk us through what really has been happening behind the scenes with the break, with you, the podcast, and what have you been feeling?
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of things. So I've done 227
Oh,
episodes.
goodness.
They're all artist interviews. Um, I felt like you for the first few years. I I was so proud of it, so into it. I couldn't wait to post the next episode. And then in 2018, so about 2 years into it, my dad died suddenly,
I'm
and
so sorry.
and I know you know that kind of
Yeah.
pain, and it was a shock. Him passing was not expected, and I just stopped caring about anything. I just didn't want to do anything. I was
Good.
so mad.
I
I was
know.
so mad at him
Yeah.
for being gone when I still needed him. I was mad at everyone who still had a dad. I was
Oh my
mad that the
God.
world was still continuing. Like, how could people be going out for lattes and going to the movies when I didn't have a dad? How could I possibly record a podcast and ask people about their lives, because I did not care about anybody. I I was just so deep in grief that I just was like, ugh. So I took quite a break then, like probably 9 months. And then people were saying, please come back, please come back. And I thought, okay, like I should, And so I did but I didn't do it for me. I did it for everybody that was asking me to do it.
Absolutely.
And I still enjoy it. I still enjoyed every single one of those conversations. But mixed in with all of this is that I've always had phone anxiety. Like, I don't even like phoning for pizza.
Good.
I love that you can online order from almost
Yeah.
everywhere now.
Yeah.
And after my first maybe 50 to 100 episodes, I ran out of people I actually knew. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I was just like
Yeah.
cold calling artists who I admired. And every time I was going, I would have so much anxiety about,
Oh my God.
I'd just be so nervous. Do you feel like that? Do you feel nervous to call people or no?
If it's coming from you, you can't. Oh my God, I can't believe this. If it's you saying that, I no longer feel ashamed of saying this because oh my God, like I'm like if I do not have enough. So I since my mom, I've been suffering from severe anxiety, CTPSD, and like you said, my mom's death was a very big shock, a very, very big shock for me. And a lot of things that happened post that, you know, honestly, I'm still angry at everybody. I'm very angry at my own mom. On, oh my, I don't have words. I feel like it's like I think losses and grief is such that at sometimes it opens a wormholes of past, present, future traumas and grief that you just can't, you don't know what's happening, and that's precisely why also I took a break. But I
Yeah.
every time just I love the conversation as long as I'm here. To be very honest, 100% honest, even this coming up till this point wasn't easy for me. This is the first episode that I'm recording with you, and I had all kinds of crazy things happening since morning. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. Should I do it? Should I not do it? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just have to push myself and see if it feels right. And maybe if I go in, I'll feel okay. And I do feel okay. But everything before that, reaching out to people, letting them know, rescheduling, um, every moment is full of so much anxiety and I feel like it's it's crazy because I do enjoy this, but
I
I feel
know. It's the
overwhelmed.
build up to it. It's the build up to it. The minute the person picks up and says hello, I'm fine.
Yes, same
It's
here.
the scheduling and the knowing that I've got that call, and like even tonight knowing that like all day I usually try and record in the morning so I can get it over with. So I just wake up and I
Yes,
do it and I don't think about it. But because of our time difference,
yes,
this is 9:30 at night for me. So all day I've known that been this call,
yes.
and it
Oh God.
stresses me out knowing it. Like it literally makes
Yeah,
no sense, because the minute you pick up, I'm so happy to see you and talk to you, and the anxiety goes away. And rationally, I know that I've done
yes,
220 episodes of my own podcast. Like I know that,
yes.
but I still can't convince myself to do it.
I
So Art for
I
Your
feel
Ear is coming back, but I'm doing it differently. It's going to be more like I'm calling it, it's still Art for Your Ear under the Art for Your Ear umbrella, but I think I might do like little series. And so the first series I'm going to do is called Crits and Coffee, like art school, but without the crying.
oh
So
wow.
I'm doing like kind of like an art consultation, but not with the person live. So I've had people send me their portfolios and their issues that they're having and the questions that they have. And then I'm just going to talk just
Review.
myself,
Wow.
but give feedback without a guest. So, and I've picked people whose questions are broad enough that I know it will like touch so many people. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm coming back with. So it'll be
This is
different.
so
Yeah. So it was really
this
good.
is
We
so
were on
interesting and
Yeah,
so different.
I needed to shake it up because I felt like I've talked to 227 people. I mean, there's endless amounts of talented people. So there's more people I can call, but I just not that I was bored of the format. I don't know. It's like creativity, right? It's like It's as if I'd been painting sunsets for 7 years, and
For a
it's like, well,
long.
I want to paint a seascape. Like, it was just like,
Yeah.
I just want to do something different creatively.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I had a big long talk about it, and kind of strategized. He was like, okay, well, what are the what's it called, like the sore points, like what don't you like? So I said the anxiety of like scheduling
Reading
guests,
it.
blah blah blah. And then he's like, okay, and what do you like? And I said, well, I love knowing that people come away from it feeling like recharged and excited, and like that they're not alone. And he was like, okay. And he's like, and what do your listeners want? And so, we went through all of that. And then and because I had such a terrible experience at art school with critiques,
Yes.
and feeling like, that to the point where I didn't want to show anyone my work for about 20 years, just
Goodness.
to have like positive reinforcement. Like, you can get feedback without it being soul crushing. You can get feedback. The whole point of it is to actually push you forward and encourage you, right? It's not to crush
Right.
your dreams and stop you in
Right.
your tracks.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I can take that bad experience that I had now, like 25 years ago, and turn it into something good for other people. So that's what the new podcast is going to be.
This is so interesting. And you know what? Um, I get you because, you know, so I think that's how we get creative with our own problems and how we approach solutions differently. I remember after my mom, I really I went into a cocoon. Um, I felt like I went in so much of a shock that for 1 year I just worked I escaped. I escaped into anything and everything I could, not confront my feelings, not feel the reality, but also the anxiety that was getting harder every day. And it was like, so I had one of my colleague who was supporting me for everything I was doing, and I was like, you know, I can show up for the call. I can do that part, but I don't think I can do any of the other part. So I recorded so much all that time, and I'm very grateful for her support because she would do, we would discuss and I would keep sharing. And that's something that really helped me because you know what, when Jealous Curator reaches out to people, they're excited and they're like, oh my goodness, you know, you do not need to push people and explain them that this is something that's going to value their time and all of that. And I was like, so when I would reach out to people, I would always feel this difference, that I always felt, oh, this is too far-fetched for me, or why would this person would
Mm.
like to come on this podcast, or why would they be interested. And I was like, so I would just tell
Just so
her,
you know, I felt exactly the same way. I always felt exactly the same way with
but do
people.
you feel that way today?
Oh yeah.
Really? Oh my
Yeah, there's
goodness.
people, there are artists who I would love to talk to, that I'm like, oh, they would never come on. And like Sandy Skoglund, I had Sandy Skoglund on, and I
Yes.
like studied her in art history, and I saw that she commented on one of my posts one time, and I was like, oh my
Oh.
god, Sandy Skoglund's following me. So I quickly messaged her, and I was like, hi, would you want to come on the podcast? She was like, I would love to. And she's just the loveliest, most amazing woman. And so it just goes to show, I mean, everybody has those like imposter
Yes.
syndrome things.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, so go on. So you were feeling like you couldn't reach out
Yeah.
to, yeah.
So I was like, maybe if this is becoming a barrier, and it wasn't that I intended. It was just that I was dealing so much within my own personal life that I couldn't be so responding. And she was like, I will reach out to people. And we had this email template, and I would just, tell her, oh, I really think this person would be interesting. Can you just drop an email? And it worked out so great that I didn't have to reach out to people, and she would just send those emails and do the scheduling. And I would, even though like recording is not that easy, like set up the whole thing, and like if technologically also it takes a lot of movements, but
Yeah.
it did make me it did make things a lot easier. But when she no longer was taught, she went for her further studies. That's when I was like, that's where I reached your point. I was like, I cannot do all of this on my own. It's too overwhelming. I was feeling so burned out, and at one point I felt like if it's going to go, then it probably would go. Um, my mental health had gone really, really, really crazy, and I was like, I need to take a break. And
Yeah.
what's even strange? What happened was while we were doing these podcasts, and I just told you like we are doing this video, and I've been doing the video podcast for very long, like ever since we've been recording. I've always recorded video, but we've never published video podcast. And
Okay.
I had this idea that I really, really wanted to do. Really wanted to do in-person podcasts, and and it was also like the drive, like I said, when you're trying to escape grief, and I was, I think, trying to escape what was happening around when I was pushing myself so much into work, like more, and I tried to do that, and I collapsed completely. It got so overwhelming that I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I can't, let alone in person, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
I reached
Yeah.
that point. I was like,
And were you still making your own art through all of this?
oh, so for the past 2 years, I haven't been able to like be at one place. And all this time, I felt crazy. Like in the beginning, I felt like, oh my God, I'm not in the studio as much as I could because I wasn't staying at one place. I didn't have one place to stay. And I felt like I'm no longer an artist and I will never be able to. Why do I even feel like because I'm not there? And like all of that. I just made a post recently also about it. And the most crazy thing happened. I had very little time. I was like, I would make sketches, and whenever I would go in the studio, I would make something and come out and make something. And I made one of my best, something that I feel very close to, my best body of work in this time. Even though it didn't feel like that's the part where we feel like I always felt like if I had to go into the studio to make a good body of work, I had to be in the studio all the time. Or that, you know, I think I was making progress, but it wasn't in the way I felt or I expected
Right.
myself to.
Mm-hmm.
Even I think you don't realize what a shock or a grief or loss can do to you. And I think I didn't realize it for till a year. I felt like I was pushing myself so much that I was numbing everything that I was feeling. And when
Yeah.
it opened up so bad that I was like, I didn't know I was feeling all of this all through this. And I was just
Yeah.
pushing myself. But
I think
it,
numb
yeah,
is the perfect word. Like, my dad died at the end of November, and I was supposed to be going to Aspen like 10 days later. I'd curated a show and I was in the show and it was going to be this amazing, opening and whatever. And I went. I, I I can't believe I went. And like even the women that ran the gallery were like, I can't believe you're here. But I think I was just in shock.
yeah,
And I was just like, I just kept moving forward,
yeah,
and yeah, I was a mess for a really long time. One of the really nice things that sort of happened during COVID for me was connecting with Peter Coyne,
yes, I know that.
because I'd had Pete on the podcast, and then I don't know I think we connected at the very end of 2019, and she was so nurturing and amazing. And she basically was like, just focus on your art for a bit. Like, because I wasn't really, I was like
All
running in a
over.
million directions and kind of feeling like I wasn't doing anything really well. Like, I was working on books and the podcast and my art and I'm a mom. And, I just kind of felt like, well, and so Peter was like, just breathe and give yourself a year to 2 years to work on something new. And I was like, a year to 2 years? Like, what? Like, because normally I would crank something out in a month,
Yeah,
It was like, see where you are in a month and then move things around and then try incorporating something else and then take something away. And I it was the first time I'd really given myself time and space to play. And I was enjoying myself so much that was sort of another reason that the podcast went away for as long as it did, because PETA asked me at one point if I could give her 5 hours a day in the studio. And I said, well, yeah, like I do have that time if if I move some stuff around. And she was like, yeah, I want you to do that. And even if it's just because you're in there tidying up or whatever, but I want you to be in your studio, being an artist. If this is what you want, I want you to do it. And I loved it so much. And I had a huge exhibition just in last
Yes.
March. And I've got a big new body of work happening right now that I'm in love with. So it's been really nice to just be selfish and just be doing my own thing. Um, at the same time, I do miss the podcast. Like I miss the sharing part. Like
Yeah.
my husband always teases me that social media was meant for me because I love being like, you guys, look at this thing. And so I think that's what I'm missing about it. So with this Crits and Coffee thing, I'm going to try 10 episodes
Okay.
and just do it like a little series, right? And see
Mm.
if
If
I crazy
enjoy.
love it, maybe there'll be 200 of them. And if at 8, I'm like, ooh, getting kind of, this is tedious. But then there'll be 10 and I'll wrap it up and I'll figure out a different series, And I think creatively, it's kind of like working on a body of work, right? It's like,
Yes.
I can't just keep painting sunsets. Like I need to keep changing
Switching
and
things up.
moving. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it's kind of funny to
Lovely.
be talking about this right now without actually doing the first one. Like, I'm so curious if I'll love it or hate it. And I'm going to do video too. And
Oh,
I
wow.
I am quite famous for really hating getting my picture taken and or being on video. So it's like, what am I doing? I'm like purposely setting
Putting
something up that
yourself.
I'm going to hate. Anyway, but no, I'm going to try it and see what I
No,
think. And
that's nice.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
okay, tell me something. You are a multi-passionate. You've done a lot of work. You have your own in the past 2 years, your own practice has evolved so much, your own work as an artist. But you
Mm-hmm.
have also built this brilliant platform and a legacy like Jealous Curator. It's a name, it's a feeling in its own. Like I said, when I see something, I'm like, and I've tagged you so many times, like, this you should see. It's like, I know that this is a Jealous Curator pick. It's just not an account, a blog. Like, it's a feeling. It's something that you've built for all these years. You've published books, podcasts. So clearly you're not like, you have a lot of things that, I think, like, when I see something and I'm like, oh, this could be a great book, or I want to do this, and I have to pull myself back, like, come back. I have a lot of things already, and, like, I need to hold myself. And I do feel like, mm, you have had been like that previously. I don't know, maybe today, but then hyper focusing and focusing on one thing. Did you have any fear of, like, as Jealous Curator also, like, of letting things go? If you take a break, what if you've built everything so far, or being focused on one?
I had that fear up until my dad dying, and then after that, like that not caring part kicked in, and we were also surprised by my dad's passing, that, and I'm sure he was too, um, that I had the whole life is short thing, and
Yeah.
so I kind of stopped worrying about. I felt like Jealous Curator, I had enough of a foundation. I
Yeah.
started in 2009. I felt like I had enough of a foundation, but I also, I thought I just want to do the things that I want to do. Like I've had a few publishers suggest different books, like, oh, why don't you write a book about this, or why don't you write a book about that? And it's like,
No.
I don't want to. Where before I would have just said, okay, because I was so afraid of, well, I was excited about the opportunities, but then I was also afraid of turning things down and
Not.
never being offered that again.
Yes.
And then I think it's just my age too, like, just getting to a point where I'm like, I'm good. you know and just doing the things I want to do. Like, I really wanted to write a children's book. Like, that was like a dream. And um it's a really tricky market to get into. It's really competitive. There's a bazillion amazing kids books out there. But I was like, I've got two now. I just had these ideas, and it was like this compulsion. Like, I needed to make
To do
these
this.
books, and I did. And I'm so proud of myself. And like, I don't know if I'll ever do another kids book or another grown-up book. If an idea comes, I totally will, but I'm not going to push myself to be on a schedule where every 2 years I'm releasing something, or I just want to like kind of honor the creativity, right? And if the
Yes.
idea comes or the passion is there, then I'm going to do it. And if it's not there, I'm not going to force something, because I think that's where burnout comes from, like that forcing yourself to push
Yes.
based on what other people think, or based on fear, or based on whatever. I feel like life's too short to feel like that.
I love that. And it's so
Yeah.
crazy, Now, that's how as we as creative and also trauma grief, how things respond. So when my mom passed away, and I think something that I feel I'm still in that mode is I went in so much of fear of losing everything, because my mom was like, it was it wasn't like it was like just a spur of the moment, like she was here and then she was no longer here.
Yeah.
And then a lot of things happened, like my father got resettled, and like a lot of things that moved, and my fear only like accelerated. And for a very long time, like that's it, like how it impacted my art practice also, because I felt like if if I wasn't putting continuous, or I wasn't keeping touch continuously, I would lose it. Like
Yeah.
I would lose being an artist. I will no longer be an artist. Or like if I don't do the
Hmm.
recordings or the podcast, if I don't speak to people, if I don't, I feel like anything will fall apart in just a snap of the moment.
Yeah. And you're kind of, yeah, waiting for the other shoe to drop in a way, because, yeah, it was so unexpected to lose your mom. Who knows what you'll lose next?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because then I I thought that it wasn't impacting my art practice, my own self as a creative. And then 1 year later, my work has changed so much. My thoughts have changed so much, and um, it impacted so much of my work, because I I started finding I wasn't able to find any kind of grounding anywhere
Mm.
else, and anything that I had in control was my work. I mean, even though if it wasn't in control, it was still something that I think I could communicate with, and I had
Right.
severe issues of abandonment. I felt like for a very long time in that process, I felt like, my I'm not feeling myself again, and I'm not feeling like a creative, and I don't know if I'll be able to create my work. And honestly, I think at one point I felt I gave up. I gave up that, I will still make art. I'll still do everything because it's it isn't a choice. I think it's more like a survival for me now. And I would
Yeah.
always question this to myself. I don't know if you did that too. Like, especially as someone who does a lot of things, I still need to remind myself, why am I making art? Is this something I'm doing just to, satisfy my ego or any other influence, or if it's something truly
Mm-hmm.
that holds myself. But when I took that gap, and every day, I think even today, every day is a strife where I feel like, how do I find a place that, even if it's on my bed, even if I have a studio but I don't have access to it, how can I make something? Even and mostly all of it is for myself. And
Yeah.
then I made a body of work that was very that I was creating in pieces for the past 1.5 year, and then one week and 10 days I sat and I was like, I need this to myself. And every time I would go back to my art practice, there was only one thing I could think about, and there was that was grounding, because I felt like when I think when you lose a parent, it feels like you lose a part of your roots. It's like you lose a ground. And I felt like I was searching for something to hold on to, like something that would tell me like, okay, this is where I belong, or this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And my practice, my art, I don't think it any longer feels like a practice. That became one thing that would remind me, okay, I would look back, and then I created. So my latest series was actually, that's why I think I also really loved yours, because my series was from jewelry that I saw my mom wear all these
Mm.
years, and like part of our upbringings. And you know and I felt like, even though she's not here, but in some ways I was trying so hard, and subconsciously, that I started to feel close to her.
Yeah.
And that happened through my own art. How
Yeah.
has how do you think your experience has been with your own work? Do you think grief, loss has impacted you over the years in your own practice?
Yeah, right after my dad died, I had a big show scheduled in the June after he died. I already knew, like, it had been scheduled for a year in Toronto. And so I made the whole show sort of subliminally. Nobody else really knew, but the whole show was sort of inspired by him. And the work was very detailed, and so it was very meditative. So I could just, it was just mark making. So I'd be mark making, and so I could just basically go on autopilot, make these swooshes, and just think about him. So there was a lot of crying. There was a lot. It was very therapeutic, though. And it's funny because I look at those pieces now and I'm like, I don't even want to look at them. I'm proud of them. I think they're nice, but there's so much pain wrapped up in them that I don't like looking at them. And then at the same time, I was having health issues, and I ended up right at the beginning of COVID. I had a hysterectomy, and the incision was gigantic. It was like a 10-inch incision across my belly, and so like trying to recover from that while COVID was happening, like it was just a mess. And so I kind of had this grief of my dad, and then the grief of the loss. Like this sounds, I mean, it kind of sounds crazy, but it felt so strange, like to be in the operating room, and they took this. They took my uterus and my fallopian tubes. They left my ovaries, but they took the the place where my baby grew, where my son grew, and they just threw it in the garbage. They just like took it out of my body and threw it in a bin that said medical waste. And I felt this huge sense of loss again, like this like grief, uh, like grieving this part of my body and this time in my life. Like I could never be pregnant again. Like they've literally taken the organ that would, like and so that I was running away from that. I was really, again, mad and sad and literally in pain because I had this giant incision to recover from. It took about 2 years for it to fully heal. And I completely, like, I thought, okay, I can either stay sad and mad, or I can use my artist superpower, because artists have this superpower to turn terrible things into something beautiful, or to express. You can, so many people just have to pack it down. Artists actually have a way of like letting it out and expressing it in a way. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what the big show last March was, and it was called Self-Preservation. I've had surgeries for fibroids and cysts, and like I think this hysterectomy was like my 5th surgery, and
My goodness.
the things they take out of you are pretty gross, right? And they were telling me how gross my uterus was, that it was misshapen and this and that, and it was the size of being 6 months pregnant and all these things. And I mean, that's gross. You don't want to think about these gross things in this place that's supposed to be this fertile ground where your
Yeah.
baby grows. And so I thought, well, I'm going to think of it a different way. I'm going to picture it beautiful and broken. So I started collecting broken pieces of jewelry, old like ceramics from the thrift shop, but I would smash them because I was mad and I wanted to smash stuff. You should try smashing stuff. Have you smashed anything?
Not yet, but I should.
Oh, you should do it. It feels so good. After my dad died, a friend of mine gave me a coupon for an axe throwing place where
Wow.
you go
We
and
don't
throw
have it
axes.
here, but I would
Well,
love that.
don't throw an axe in public. You might get arrested. But smashing stuff with grief really helps. So I started smashing stuff and then putting things back together. And I was putting them into these jars. And at the same time, I'd always, over the years, as I was having all these surgeries and they kept telling me what was growing in me, being an artist, I always have visuals in my head. And so
Visuals,
I
yes.
always pictured my reproductive area like an ashtray. It just seemed like it was like, after a party, like the next morning, and
Yeah,
there's an ashtray and there's like cigarette
yeah.
butts, but there's a bottle cap in there, and there's like, a piece of old gum. And it's just like, that's what I felt like was my uterus. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do that. So I started like putting these beautiful things mixed together with garbage. And that's what the self preservation became. It was like I was preserving these artifacts. Um, and I poured resin in the jar so it looked like formaldehyde, like it looked like little like natural history museum specimens, but it was
Yeah.
actually the self preservation of my sanity because I just needed a way to articulate all of this and kind of turn the narrative around because it was going downhill really fast.
I think, there's something very important that you've mentioned here because I think, um, I do feel, I don't know if you feel that way. I think a loss like this has at least made me a lot more sensitive um, towards a lot of emotions. I think I feel, as a normal person, I think I feel things a lot more elevated,
Mm-hmm.
um, more like, let's say, if it's, and it's confusing. Honestly, it's confusing. At one point, if there's something that's happening, I feel like I have such a big loss that I feel in my body and soul that even I don't feel in control of. And when I feel something like, when I've dealt with this, it numbs you out to a lot of things. But
Yeah.
on the contrary, it's also made me so much more sensitive in the sense that if something is close to me and I think I have a fear, like you said, like, it was a place where your own son came from. So it meant something to you. And
Yeah.
to someone, it would be just a piece of biology or a body part that has no purpose or like, but
Yeah.
for
Taking your
you,
gallbladder out.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But for you, it was, it was a part of you. It was a part of your
Yeah. It was
son.
almost sacred. Yeah. And
Yeah,
because before I had him, I'd had a few surgeries and they basically said, we're not sure if you can even get pregnant. Like, give it a try, but we don't really know. And and then I did get pregnant and I had this beautiful baby and we only got to have one. And then they just took out the thing and they threw it away. And it was
yeah,
just like, but wait, what? And I know that that organ doesn't make me a woman, but there's
yeah,
something very, I mean, it kind of does in a way, and so having them to just throw it away and like it's incinerated and you're like, oh, okay. And so I really did feel like, I mean, if anybody is listening that is having a hard time with whatever it is, it could be anything, using our art as a way to process that. You don't have to show that art to anyone ever. There doesn't need to be an exhibition. You don't ever need to sell it, but almost as art therapy, like as a way of processing it. And I had over 3,000 clay cigarettes in all of these sculptures and stuff. And just sitting there making these clay cigarettes
was,
was so meditative, and I would just sit down in my studio for like, 6 hours at a time, just rolling out clay, putting it down, rolling it out, putting it down. And as I was doing that, it kind of let me process everything and think about everything and have a cry and have an aha moment and keep on rolling. And then, it was like
yeah,
therapy. And if
yeah.
nobody ever saw that work, I didn't really care because it was so important and necessary to me. And I think that's something that we're so blessed with, creative people, that
I agree.
we can use it to heal ourselves and
Yes.
hopefully other people.
Yeah, so when after my mom, so I felt like I still feel like in this juggle where I feel like, so I'm pretty young when, of course, when I lost my mom, I was 27 when I lost my mom, and I kept on thinking about, so I'm the youngest out of my siblings, and they have
Mhm.
children, and they have they have their own families, and then my father got resettled, and I kept on feeling that instability and sense of loss that only felt elevated and elevated. And I was so scared, even though like I felt like I became these two people, one who was
Mhm.
so much bothered and invested in the loss that I felt, but also the old me who was working very hard, who had all these
Mm.
ambitions and dreams. And I felt like if I was going in either way a little bit more, I I was losing something, because
Mm-hmm.
if I felt so much drowned in the grief, I was still feeling the loss of my own dreams, because I knew that if I was going down that rabbit hole, I I was losing a big part of who I wanted to become. And also
Right.
that was the ticket to gaining something, because I knew that I needed to make a lot of things on my own from here. And but my soul and my body also required that slowdown. And I was
Yep.
so scared of stepping into the studio, because the moment I would have, and I think that was also something, because the moment I would have one moment free, I would, I would, I would have these. And I'm a big time overthinker. Like, I can
Me
literally
too.
overthink and overthink, and I think a lot of us and that's also makes us sensitive towards thinking things that a lot of people may not. And I was
Yep.
so scared of being in the studio, because I was like, if I am alone for even a little while, I don't know what's going to happen. I just don't know how I'm going to, and I threw myself in work. And
Yep.
honestly, I do also feel I'm grateful for that, because if I didn't have this, I don't know where would I be, because I would literally drown myself into that. But
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I cried. I wrote. I I felt like a failure. I felt like anything, like as terrible as I could. But then I picked up myself back, and I invested all of those feelings into my work. And
Mm-hmm.
here's my question. Someone who's also feeling grief, especially I think this is as an artist. Um, like you said, taking your time, making art for yourself. But I think in the past 2 years, I today I've reached a point that I feel like art has is my survival. It's not a profession. It's not a passion. It's not a choice. I, as a person, need this to process who I am, my feelings, because if I don't do that, it becomes too hard for me to even get through a day. I need that to survive.
Yeah.
But there's another side to it. I want to be an artist. I also want to be successful. I want to have all those fancy things, or maybe at least I think experience them and know that if I want it or not. I think
Yep.
they're two different
Mm-hmm.
things. But when you're in a state like that, I think I have felt this juggle where I feel like I want to make this for myself, but I also want all of those things, and I feel like I'm losing out on them.
Right.
What do you say?
I think I think we live in such a time where everything feels like you have to do it now, and the thing is, there's time. There is time, and um, I purposely haven't sold any of the work that was in that big exhibition. It feels way too personal, and I had people reach out and want to buy things, and I was like, no.
No.
Which seems crazy because I invested so much time and money into all the work, but it just I'm gonna let that experience and that work push me to the next series that I then will sell and whatever. And so I think it's so important to remember, like, to just give yourself that time and space. Like, if you took a year to just make work that was about your mom and grief and all the crazy things, and nothing happens, you never show that work or whatever, I think there's so much value in that, because it's going to get you somewhere new. It's going to
Yeah.
help you through the pain. It's going to, and in this meantime, your hands are still working. You're still, like, I feel the same way. If I haven't made
Yeah.
anything in a few days, I am so
Yeah.
grouchy, and I need it. It's like air
Yes.
for me. And I
Same.
think, but we live in such a, like, Instagram world where things have to happen so fast, and there
Yeah.
have to be likes, and we have to sell, and we have to, and we don't. There is plenty of time. And if you're trying to uh, show and sell and all that stuff in a moment when you're not ready to do that, you're not going to be ready for that success anyway.
Yeah.
You're just going to be, if you're not, you need to give yourself time to heal. And I wanted to
Yeah.
say one thing about that grounded feeling. Like, um, what I said to my mom afterwards was that, like, my mom and dad are both they're very different. And they were always together. They were married for 50 years, but I go to my mom for some things, I go to my dad for other
Yes.
things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was 40. How old was I? 40. 46, I think, when my dad, 46 or 47 when my dad died, I instantly felt like a 5-year-old. Like I instantly was like, where's my dad? Like I instantly
Yeah.
felt that, not like a woman with a husband and a child
Husband.
and a mortgage. I felt like a little kid. And I said to my mom that I felt like it, and I still feel like this, that like two legs of my table fell.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like she
Yeah.
holds up this side of the table, my dad held up this side of the table, and I could go either way depending on what I needed, the kind of advice I needed or the kind of ear that I needed or whatever. And my dad, that part of it's just gone. And I just felt so unbalanced and so like I was just grasping for anything, like I messaged him on Facebook because we used to talk on Facebook every day. I messaged him on Facebook for about a year after he died. And I would just message and be like, hi, Dad, here's what's going on. Or if like I got my kid's book deal and I was so excited because
Oh, wow.
I told him about the idea of the book and he was so proud of me for pitching it. And I didn't get the deal until after he had passed. So I messaged him on Facebook and I was like, Dad, guess what? And then, it broke my heart that there was no 3 little dots seeing that he was writing back. I felt kind of crazy, but I
No.
just needed to tell him stuff. And I felt so brokenhearted that he wasn't there to tell. And my mom is very, very like enlightened and very spiritual. And she talks to my dad like every day. And so she's like, you can still just talk to Dad. Like you can still just tell him stuff. And I'm like, I know, but I just
I
want
can
to,
hear.
yeah, I
You
just
can't
want
hear
to
it back
phone him.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, and it's true though, if I ask him something, I know. I have known him my whole life. I know what he would say.
Yeah.
If I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Dad, I'm frustrated because, I'm not getting, advancing my career fast enough or whatever. I know what he would say, and so it's like I can almost hear him and it's like, yeah, I know. Okay. Settle
I
down.
love
Just keep
that.
doing what I'm doing, and so they're there with you, and it's been 4 years. We just passed the 4-year anniversary of my dad. And I still like that. My table will never be even again,
Yeah.
and I love my mom so much. But it's just, they're just different. They were just different energies and just, they provided different things to me and my siblings. And I'll never have that side of my table back. And I just have to learn how to live
Good.
differently.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
no, that's true. And I think I felt so. Like you said, you go to your mom for certain things, and I had my mom for everything. So
Yeah.
we had this relationship that she was one and all, and I suddenly felt like everything because it was literally like both the legs came down,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
still you used to message, and I still have some. I used to journal, like I still journal, but after her, so my journal basically became like a letter every morning. It became like a letter to her, and I needed that outlet. And I was like, I would feel crazy because I was like, I know she's not going to read this. I know that this journal will never go out in the world because it's one thing that's only for me, with me, and I never want anybody to see it ever. But for some reason I just needed to feel that one. And I think as a child specifically, like we all, even though she was the center, we all had, like with your parents, you all have separate relationships. Like
Yeah.
what was between me and my mother was a personal relationship, me and my sister was their relationship. And for once I felt like I needed that something that was just me and her. And then I
Yeah.
had, like, today I have this big journal that's just me and her, and every day in the morning that's something I do. And it's become like a, if I skip a few days and I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out, I'm not being able to
Mm,
speak to her, or like. And the strange part is that when you have them, you don't realize how much strong a part of the system they are unless you
yeah.
lose them.
Yeah. I know. And it also just feels like you're never going to. Like you just see, and then all of a sudden, and especially if it is sudden and they're just gone and you didn't get to say the things, you wanted to say or
Yeah, I yes.
whatever. Yeah, it's just such a such a process to get your head around, and I'm sure you've heard the story of my dad. He was in Jamaica when he died,
Yes.
and he was there to run a marathon, and then so we had all of the red tape of all the government stuff of trying to get him home, and it was just like it just felt like trauma on top of trauma. And then we were speaking to police officers and all this stuff, like from Jamaica to Canada, and like it was just a nightmare. And um, it was just too much to process, I
Deal
think,
with.
at the
Yes.
time. Yeah, and so, but I think, I mean, I don't know what you believe, but like I feel my dad around all the time. Like I know, like right after he passed, I could feel, it felt like a hot hand on my back. Like I felt like I thought my husband had his hand on my back. Like that's what it felt like. And there's nobody there. And
Yeah.
every now and then, if I'm feeling like if I'm having a really hard time, I'll feel that. I'll feel that pressure on
Mm.
my back. And I just feel like it's my dad just being like, it's okay. Like, you're good. And
Yeah.
and so I have to believe that he's nearby
Yeah.
because I still need him.
I
I
wear my
still need
mom's
him.
clothes every day.
Yeah.
Every day. I don't let go of, like, if there's something that's happening and I've every constant thing, I feel like she should be here. This is her moment. This was her. And I'm like, I started believing in things that she did or continue things that she would do and nobody's doing right now,
Yeah.
or wear her clothes because she loved them crazy. She was like,
Yeah.
she was obsessed. She was obsessed with the jewelry, her clothes, and suddenly, and I think even my art, and I felt like this was one thing that was between me and her, and now I feel like I want to take this forward. It's made me more comfortable with who I am. I think the past 2 years, even as an artist, I have felt like I have embraced my own roots because I think she's gone to the ground. Like, I feel that now that she is
Mm-hmm.
a part of my road and I need to embrace that, and I feel more comfortable and I feel more grateful for how I grew up and the culture. And she was my source of, like, she was an artist for me. She was an amazing artist. So she was one person who, and like you said, I come from, like, India is a very patriarchal country, and so
Mm-hmm.
she would be constantly be that one push. You need to keep going. You need to make this for yourself. Don't get married until you feel ready, and like all of those things that you wouldn't probably hear from. So she was very different, and she had those un, unfulfilled desires of living a life, and she would always tell me, you know what, you need to do this. Like, she would really
Mm.
always help me, and every time I feel like I'm not moving forward, and I would think like this is what she would want of me, and she would never like that and it really gives me a
That you
push.
start. Yeah, it's so cool because you're still so young and you have so much ahead of you, and it's so interesting. Like, the loss is still very fresh. Like, 2 years is not very long. um, but I can just picture you being like, a 70-year-old artist who's showing, at MoMA, your retrospective, and the things that you're figuring out now about yourself and about understanding how important your roots are, and your roots to her, and the fact that she was different and was pushing you to be a strong independent woman, not pressuring you to get married and have babies, and that's going to feed into all of the art, whether it's like really obvious or not. All of that is going to be there. All of your experiences are going to feed into that. And I can't even wait to see what you're making in your 30s and 40s and 50s, because this is where it's all starting. When I went to art school, I was so confused because I hadn't really, nothing had happened to me. I had nothing to express. I, was from a nice little white middle class family in Canada, and there was nothing. I was like, I don't know, like I had nothing to say in my art, right? But now I've lived some life. I've
Yeah.
experienced good things and bad things and joy and sorrow, and I finally have things I want to say through my art.
Yes.
And your mom would be so proud that you're harnessing this stuff, living the life that you want to live, with her as, your
Yeah.
strength, your roots. Like, how beautiful is that? Like, what a way to honor her.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, tell me something on another note.
Okay.
How does it feel to be, do you feel there's a strife between being Daniel and being the jealous curator? Like, as an artist, but then also someone, like, the, it's like it's two different places, two different identities, uh,
Yeah.
and one person.
Yeah. It
What
does
are your
feel,
thoughts on that?
yeah, it does feel very like two personalities. And like I said earlier, sometimes with my Danielle Krysa artwork, I think, ooh, would the Jealous Curator write about this? So I do have that split. Even when I'm working, like I'll have days where I'm like, I'm just going to be in the studio today. So that's a Danielle Krysa day. And then I have days where like I'm working on marketing the book or I'm writing my newsletter or whatever. Those are my Jealous Curator days. So it is weird. It does feel like two different things, but I couldn't give up either of them. I love them
Yes.
both
No.
so much. And it's kind of cool because for the first several years of Jealous Curator, I kept my identity completely secret.
Oh
So
wow.
nobody knew that Danielle, like that's why my picture on Jealous Curator is the
Yes.
Polaroid over my face. I kept my identity completely secret for years, 3 years, I think. And so and part of that was because I didn't feel like my artwork was up to par. I was nervous that if people, they wouldn't think
Yes.
Danielle Krysa's art was good enough compared to the Jealous Curator. Um, so yeah, I kind of kept it secret. And then now, I mean, it's been what? Am I coming up on 14 years? Yeah. Oh my
Wow.
gosh. In February
God.
22nd will be 14 years. So now I feel like in the last few years, things have merged
Yes.
together a lot more. And I'm more confident with my art, probably because of people like Penny Lane, doing consultations with her and getting her to really push me. And then working with Peta Coyne for that, couple of years. And really just believing in myself. Like my dad was my biggest cheerleader. Like he was framing my art when I was a little kid, and he's the one that told me when I was a science major in my first year of university, and he's the one that told me to switch to fine art.
I know. I've
So
heard that.
yeah, and so the fact that like um, I'm really doing this now, he would be
And
so
so
proud,
proud.
and so I mean, he was also ridiculously proud of the Jealous Curator and the books and everything, and so and he loved Facebook, so constantly on Facebook he would be like, listen to what Danielle did, and he would like do a big
Yes.
post about whatever. So but I just feel like he would be really proud that I'm living the life of an artist, and so that kind of pushes me forward. But yeah, it's nice. Jealous Curator and Danielle Krysa have kind of become a little more connected now, which feels better to me now in
Yeah.
my yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there's like sometimes I feel this strife, um, where I feel like, and also like I don't know what's going to happen in future. If but there are always these questions that you keep. Am I doing? Because there's always like we all have only so much of time, and there's a whole
Right.
life that comes in the way, and then you consciously need to make a choice that do you want to invest this? Where do you want to put this time right now in? And I'm
Yeah.
like, even though I feel like I want to go but life happens and something happens. I'm like, I need to take care of this. And I keep asking myself, am I like also like this kind of a guilt, like at back of the mind, like,
Yeah.
am I not putting myself first enough, my art enough? Or is
Mm.
it just a moment of time because this is what's the best? But in your early years, did you feel like your art was taking a back seat, or
Oh,
um,
totally. Yeah. My art
how
was
did you deal with
completely
that?
about it was that was fine with me because I was so mortified by the thought of anyone seeing my work that I didn't want people to see it. I was so embarrassed. And then even once I did start showing, because I have pushy friends that own galleries that I met through Jealous Curator, and once they found out I made art, they forced me to show my work. And I wouldn't even promote the shows. I wouldn't even tell people that it was happening. And but it was really like, once I met PETA, because I had her on my podcast and I was doing my usual interviewing her, and she kept interviewing me. She kept being like, well, tell me about your work. I'm like, what? No, I'm trying to interview you. And she's like, well, I really want to know about you. And after the call was over, she said, I would really love to work with you because I think there's so much potential. I think you're really smart and talented, and I would love to like work with you. And I was like, okay. And that was in 2019. And that was what it was. That was really, I think it felt like a new cheerleader. Like
Yeah.
it felt like somebody being like, and she didn't get mad at me, but she got a little bit like, well, what do you want? And I said, she said, do you want to be a commercial artist or a museum artist or not an artist at all or an author, or like, what do you want? And I said, I want to be a museum artist. I want to see my work in MoMA one day. And she was like, okay, well, let's go do that. That said, I still have written my kids' books that I'm still doing, whatever. But I just manage my time, and I don't feel like I need to be doing both every day. If I only get to the studio now a couple times a week, then so be it. It's not gone. It's there, but I'm busy this week and I'll get to it. And then sometimes I don't do very much with the Jealous Curator. Like I took that huge break from the podcast and just focused on my work. But while I was taking a break from the podcast, I was still writing my newsletter every day. I was still posting to Instagram every day. So I just find a way to balance it because I love them both so much. I'm also a mom, but my son is 16 now, so he doesn't care where I am anymore. When I started Jealous Curator, he was 2. So it was really tricky, right? I would basically write posts when he was napping. And then, now he's 16 and a half and he's never home. So
did you ever think? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I know exactly what you're going to say. Did I ever think I'd still be going at this stage? No,
yes.
Absolutely not. I thought it would be a neat little thing to do. It was, it was going to be therapy for me to get me back into the art world. And that was about it. I never thought I'd have readers. I never thought I'd be writing books. Like none of this was a plan. It just sort of organically happened. And I'm an overachiever, so I went with it. And then, and so it's kind of amazing that it's been this long. But I think being a mom too, and being so busy, I was a full-time graphic designer. I was running Jealous Curator, and I had a toddler. I got really good at time management. And now that he's 16, I feel like, I've got all the time in the world. Yeah. So of course we got a puppy, and now she takes all my time.
I love her.
Yeah.
Oh my
she's
God.
so
I have 3.
You do?
Yeah, I have 3. My mom and I loved, they are my peace of heart. Like I can't live without them. And ever since she's gone, I would always feel like a little sister, like their big sister. But ever since she's gone, I feel like I have 3 children now that I need to think about, and like if they wouldn't be there, I don't think I would have even made these last 2 years, because oh my God, dogs have so much love to take and give, and they give you so much warmth that I don't think anybody else can ever give.
Nope, they just snuggle right up and make everything better and okay. And absolutely.
So you're raising another child now?
Yeah. Now I'm like, oh, it's perfect, because he's like, we were just talking in the car on the way to school today. He's going to be going to college in a year and a half.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, I'm going to need more dogs. I'm going to get 12 puppies, and that's the only thing that'll get me through. Yeah.
Yes. But wouldn't that be your dream?
Kind of. Yeah. I would have no time for the podcast or art or anything.
No. So, when I used to record, so when I was recording for the past season. So I would have all my three girls, like they would sleep on the bed with me, and I would set up cozy on the desk, and I know that all of them are sleeping, and one of them snores so hard, so I would like literally put her under blankets. I'm like, but I love that way. Like it, I just made it work because I really wanted to make it work, and I was like, I still love recording with them in the room because
Yeah.
if they're out, they anyways will keep scratching the door and keep coming in.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
why don't you sleep here, snore,
Yes.
do whatever you want, but be here.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
tell
know where
me,
Agnes is. Somebody's
where
keeping
is
her.
she?
I think she's sleeping on the couch. I think my husband's keeping her behaving nicely. As soon as I close this door, she panics, like she thinks I'm
Yes.
trapped in here, so she's going to come and
Hmm.
rescue me. And anyway,
See,
oh,
so
she was
one full
bad
day.
today. She was running through the snow and she ran up our mountain and wouldn't come back. And oh my god. Anyway,
You've
she
got
came back
naughty child.
eventually. Yeah,
Spoiled
yeah.
and naughty.
Yes, she can be very naughty. Anyway, I digress. Yeah.
Okay, tell me what's coming. What you I want to I want this episode to be about Daniel. I love Jealous Curator. I know there's a lot of Jealous Curator out there, but for some reason I wanted this episode to be about Daniel Krysa. So I'm going to ask you first. What what is Daniel looking forward to now? Where like I feel like a lot is going to happen for you. Like in the past 2 years, like it's of course we've heard about Jealous Curator, but I think Daniel took over a lot of you this time. So what's
Yeah,
coming? What are
yeah.
you like?
Well, I joined a ceramics studio. I've always
Yes,
wanted to do
I've done that.
ceramics, and I thought I couldn't do it. I was basically told in art school that I wasn't good with making things with my hands, so I somehow believed that. But my friend owns a studio, and so I just took a class there to support her, and then I was like,
This
oh
is it.
boy. And then I joined as a member, and so I've been working on a whole bunch of when I was in Venice for the Biennale in the summertime. It was a really weird, magical experience. I've been there. This was my fourth year, but it was very witchy, very feminine,
Wow.
witch related because the title of the Biennale this year was Milk of Dreams, which is a book that Leonora Carrington had written for her children. And she was kind of witchy and an alchemist and a surrealist painter. And so a lot of the theme of the show was
Sure.
her and her, other female artists that were working in a similar way. And then in the group that I was there with, I met a couple of women who I just completely bonded with. And it just felt really like, I don't know, there was just something in the air. And so all I could keep picturing was slabs of ceramics in collage form. So I normally cut things out of paper and collage them, but all I could picture was like pieces of clay, all individually fired and glazed and then put back together as a collage. And I was like, so I'm
Oh
messaging
wow.
my friend who owns the studio, and I was like, if I did this and this, would this work? And she was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we could try it. And I was like, okay. And then I messaged her again. Is there glow in the dark glaze? And she was like, what? And so anyway, so I came back and I basically just spent the whole fall and winter experimenting and making all these different bits and pieces. And it's finally kind of all coming together. Granted, ceramics is really, really
I'm loving
slow.
those hands.
Yeah, I've been making hands and snakes and combs and peach pits and all this stuff. And I think people at the studio think I'm nuts because they're all making mugs and bowls, and then I'm like this weird lady making like snakes and hair combs. But anyway, there is a master plan. But at the same time, I've been working on another kind of witchy series of paper collages of like these portraits of women, because it's more immediate. It's fast. Like I need to be able to make art fast too, and the ceramics is so slow that I
Slow.
needed another. Yeah, so I've got these two series going, but they're both about the power of women and the alchemy that we kind of possess, and like everything that's been happening in the media, like in the US with like abortion rights being taken away, and just patriarchy in general, and have, women kind of going, hey, no, like I am done, and it's sort of all about that. So it still has my tongue-in-cheek bit of humor mixed in with this sort of like rah women.
Right.
Yeah. So I have
I'm
no
very
idea.
excited.
I have no show lined up. I've got nothing, but I
Yes.
am making work like
You have
as
us
though I
lined
do.
up.
Yeah,
You have us
exactly.
lined up.
Yeah.
We're all waiting for you.
Oh,
Both ways.
I'm
I think
having
I'm
so
very
much
excited.
fun. Yeah. So I'm just doing that, and just trying to connect with, like, learn as much as I can. Like in the ceramic studio, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I've been playing with resin, like all these things I thought I couldn't do. I've sort of been like, that makes no sense. Like, why do I think I can't do that? So I've just been trying stuff, and of course, you make a bunch of mistakes, but it's like
Yes.
I just keep going, and
And that's the fun part,
yeah,
specifically in our creative practice.
it's been so much fun. And then the thing I'm super excited about, which is Danielle Krysa / Jealous Curator, is the kids book. It comes out in March, and this is my
Yay! I
second
love
one.
them.
My
How to
first
spot
kids
an artist.
book, yeah, How to Spot an Artist, came out right in the middle of the pandemic, so the whole
Yes.
book tour got canceled. And my
Oh
dream, my
yes.
whole life,
Yes.
has been
Yes.
to read a book I wrote to kids. And I've done lots of book tours for my grown-up books, but everything for my kids book got canceled. So this one comes out in March, so I'm like out of control, like booking things, so that, and I want to be the lady that comes, and the weird art lady that reads this story to a bunch of weird art kids. Like, I'm so excited. So I've got a few dates and cities set already, and
Come
I'm
to
just
India.
gonna. So, okay, deal. Did you hear me talking that my parents went to India right before my dad died?
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that was like, it was for their 50th wedding anniversary. My mom has always wanted to go to India, so my dad planned this 6-week trip to India and Nepal, and it was so crazy because they came home and he's showing me all of his pictures, and his favorite part. So they flew around. They got a little plane and
To the
flew around the
country.
top of Everest and did the whole thing, and they went to the Taj Mahal. They did all this stuff.
Oh,
His
I live
favorite
in
I
Naga.
know
I
you
live in, yes.
do. I
Yes.
know you do. He said his favorite part was, and this was crazy, he told me this 10 days before he died. His favorite part was uh, the cremations on the Ganges River. He loved it. He said it was the most. I was like, what? I was like, Dad, that's so morbid. And he's like, no, it's not morbid at all. He's like, it's so beautiful. And he said, there's marigolds everywhere. And
Yes.
he said, people are so happy because it's that if you get permission
Yeah.
to do, it means
Do
it's a
that.
quicker path to heaven, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so my
It's
dad
like
was
the
like,
holy place in India.
yeah, and he just thought it was the most beautiful thing, and that's all he talked about. And then he died. And I was like, "Oh, I wish we could have set you free on the Ganges, Dad."
Yeah.
And so I actually have a pair
Oh,
of his cowboy boots, and I have some marigolds on his boots because he. But it's so funny, yeah. So they had
yes.
just been there,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and he bought my mom some fancy jewelry. She was like, "What are you doing? We spent so much money on this trip," but now she wears them every day,
Yes.
and yeah. So anyway, it was
I
kind of
love that.
neat. Yeah.
I love that. I am very sure like you would love India so much. So I've recently gone to Golden Temple like just before the New Year, and like just sharing because how you just shared like the ceramic, the part, like you'll find so much in like you'll never feel like an odd one out because that's what a lot of like the temple is made out of ceramics, pieces
Mm,
coming together, and so it's like whole like you would go crazy. I'm telling you because I was like, I do not want to go back, and there's so many
yeah.
like it's like a heaven, and that's what I really like and enjoy about your work because I feel like that tactileness and that
Mm,
surface and experimentation and like pieces coming together. So for
Well,
you,
even
I
and
think
like,
it'll be
but
like
when you were
a
talking about the markets, like,
yes,
and
oh
I've
my
heard like
God,
this. My mom and dad had pictures of the spice markets, like just the colors and the
colors.
perfect like piles and everything. I think I'd be in heaven too.
Come, I'll take you around.
Okay, okay, deal.
Let's do that. And then we'll make
Okay.
collages and like we'll be like those two like and I have a beautiful studio here also that you can like by the river and like oh my
Oh my
God, wouldn't
God,
they? Let's do that.
that sounds like a dream.
Yes. Bring Agnes also.
Okay.
That would be so nice. Thank you so much, Daniel. I had so much fun. I know this wasn't like a typical your journey or like
No,
episode, but
this was so good because sometimes I feel like I could talk about my dad all day long and I feel like, oh, I really shouldn't keep going there. And this was like a really
no.
nice chance to talk about it. And I think it is so important. It's part of life.
Yes.
Everyone's experienced it. And everyone that's listening now, I'm sure are artists. And if hopefully we can help them channel, if they're feeling grief as well or anything, anything that's tough, just to remember that art can save you.
Yeah, and I really
Yeah.
want to add on to this is like I had a hard time the new year. Like, the social media is flooded with people throwing back and like all the achievements and like things happening and like this. I felt like so I went into a major panic zone for the last couple of days because I felt like I did not want to look back at this year. I didn't want to like I felt like when I lost my mom, I felt like I was having a very hard time and that was a difficult year. But 2022 felt so much harder because what has had happened, but everything's kept like it was like a pile of loss that just kept on,
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
together. And I was on social media and I felt like I do not want this to be a new year. I just don't want this. I don't like, and I was like, I had to give into it. So I didn't make any posts. I didn't, and I was like, I do not want to rush myself. And anybody who's who feels the way I do at the moment, that it's okay if you're not ready for something new and you still are waiting for something, and if you don't want to participate, it's okay. I think
Yeah.
I made that.
You're not going to miss out on anything. You have
Yeah,
to take care of yourself. The world will still be there. Instagram will still be there. You're not going to lose, sales or this or that. You have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, there's nothing left for later when you are feeling better.
yes,
Like you just have to
yes,
go into your cocoon if you need to. We'll all be here waiting when you come out.
yes, and cheer for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to share this episode with our listeners. One last thing, if you have anything before we end this episode, where people, of course, people know where to find you, but anything that you want to share before we go.
Yeah, you can just find me at the Jealous Curator on Instagram. That's probably the best place because I post there so often that, there'll be book stuff there and I have a direct link over to my art. So that's kind of the best hub of the place to go. Yeah.
Do you also want to mention something that I truly love? The subscription, your
Oh, yeah.
newsletters.
Yes, I have a newsletter. It's a daily newsletter. It's called the No Such Thing as Too Much Art Society. And it's, yeah, I write every Monday through Saturday and it costs $36 a month, which is, a month, a year. So that's
That was
$3.
like, I'm like, no,
No, that's not right. $36 a year. So that's $3
that's
a month.
crazy,
Yeah. So
crazy.
I did the math. It's like 12 cents a day. And I'm like, wow, I am really underpaying myself here.
Yes,
But
yes,
um, that's fine because I know that artists, if they have extra money, they want to spend it on gouache and acrylic paint, not on newsletter subscription. So I really wanted it to be not too expensive, but I promise you it's worth it because I feature an artist every day, but then each day has a theme. So there's like Monday motivation, and every Wednesday there's a creative jumpstart. And so there's lots and lots of good artsy content in there.
I love one opening in my inbox every day. I love it. So I
Oh, thank
highly
you so
recommend
much.
it. What's coming
Thank you.
tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Well, you're already in tomorrow.
Oh,
So let's see what's tomorrow. Oh, there's a Dear Artie. That's a new Thursday therapy that I've started, and I wrote the Dear Artie letter this week about AI.
Oh my goodness, that's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic. I said,
That's
please answer in the comments nicely with a little smiley because it can get very heated very quickly. I'm just so curious because this little community, this newsletter community, there's it's not like my Instagram following is gigantic, but this newsletter is a much smaller group, and everyone is so lovely and amazing. So when people do chime in on the Dear Artie, it's like a play on Dear Abby, the comments are so thoughtful and so amazing. So I thought this AI thing has just been crazy. And I'm like, I wonder what this crew
what people
thinks.
think. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And it'll be really insightful. Hopefully nobody yells at me, but I just want to know what they think.
yes. I'm
Yeah.
excited. I want to see that.
Yeah. It's coming. It'll be there in
Yes,
2 hours for you. Yeah.
yes. Yay! Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.